Welcome to the first ever episode of Ludiculous. I am Felix Supernova, and what we're going to be doing on this show is talking about video game academic theory while playing the games themselves. So today, as per everything we do here at Gymcrack, we're following the weekly theme, and the weekly theme is Gymcrack itself. Surprise, surprise. The idea here is to try and let you guys into what we're into. So Gymcrack just means flashy but cheap. So we're going to be talking about the Narratology versus Ludology debate, because people still talk about it like it's a real thing, but it's dead. Pretty much what is accepted is that you need both perspectives to be able to talk about games seriously. But it's important that we know the root of these two perspectives in order to understand new ways to talk about games. And that's what I'm really interested in here. Narratology essentially is the traditional perspective of analyzing games like a text. Say you would film, you would a book, you would visual art, all the traditional forms of art, although I'm going to argue in a few weeks' time that games aren't art. So in 2 more weeks' time, I think, we'll have that video, but you'll have to wait for that. Although, having said that, obviously reading games as a text is perfectly valid and is a very interesting thing to do, so I'll let that slide. And Ludology is about looking at those things that are uniquely game-like, like game mechanic and structures that are built around making a game more competitive, more addictive, which is another episode we've got coming up. I think we're looking at Skyrim for that one. All right, so the first thing we're going to be talking about is Aki Jarvanen's definitions. So the first definition is a component. Now, a component is any resource for play. So these units are components, these cities are components, anything which I can command is a component of play. And for the city-states, they have their own components that the AI are managing. Same with other empires. Now, one of the core components is the city. So let's take a look at the city to explore this idea a bit further and a few more definitions. So the city, as a component, is restrained by its environment or the space for play. Now, when I'm playing with this city, I can only manage the environment in which that falls under the rule of that city. We can see that by where I can allocate citizens. Now, that environment can be more broadly construed to be the entire map. And we can say that the environment has components distributed across it, so the rule set enforces an engagement with the environment. So some of the restraints here we can see is allocating my citizens to different resources and the impacts that that has on my city. We can see more rule sets. My production is guided by how many citizens I have allocated to units where production is cool. By cool, I mean it has more output here for that particular resource that I want, that resource being production. And so there's a hierarchy that's being produced as a subset, which is what Aki Jarvanen says would happen. So there is a goal hierarchy in my empire to maximize science. And you can see science here. Now, the reason I want to maximize science is because I want the A-bomb before everybody else. Just going to be honest. All right, so that's the component, environment, and rule set as explained by cities. Let's take a look at the technology tree. So we're going to look at Hunnick, LeBlanc, and Zebek via Civ5's technology tree. So they point out, as hardcore ludologists, 3 things that a game needs to be a game: mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics. So the mechanics are the raw data. Let's take a look at the raw data in our technology tree. We have the costs in terms of science that we need to put into the research, and that's data. So it's not something that we can necessarily view directly, although here luckily we can, because Civ5 wants players to engage very closely with its mechanics. So we can say the data and the algorithms here show us how much we need to invest to unlock a technology, how much more we need to invest to unlock the next, and therefore we can see a relation between the two of an increasing investment to unlock further futuristic technologies. So when we go from looking at gunpowder, how much it costs in isolation, to how do we get from gunpowder to chemistry and from chemistry to fertilizer, we move from mechanics and into dynamics. And so dynamics is the runtime behavior. So in order to get 687 science, for me at the moment, would take 2 turns. That is transferring a mechanic into a dynamic. If I want to get fertilizer, I can see that it's going to take me 2 turns. So that is the mechanic being expressed. When I take the next turn and the next turn again, and I finally am granted the technology of fertilizer, then I can witness a dynamic of the game unfolding. And the final element from Hunnick, LeBlanc, and Zebek is aesthetics. So what is the aesthetic in terms of talking about a game? Well, they want to say that it's a desirable emotional responses being evoked in the player. So what is a desirable response? I want my civilization to have more food, so I'm investing in fertilizer. It's also very important for me to get fertilizer so I can upgrade to dynamite. I want dynamite because I love explosions. So the aesthetic is me relating to the mechanic executing itself over time and becoming emotionally invested in it. I don't just have to unlock fertilizer because it's a part of the mechanic and I'm just playing out the game. I want fertilizer because I identify with my cities, the amount of food they're producing, which is not very much. Salzburg is developing a decent amount of food, but not a great amount of food. And I want to be able to change that. And I'm having a positive impact by investing in what I emotionally am attached to. So an aesthetic has been generated through something simple as an information tree. So we're going to talk about the last few things that Aki Jarvanen discusses in the paper introducing applied ludology, and that's game mechanics, theme, and information. Okay, so game mechanic is actions players take as a means of achieving a goal. Okay, so first goal. Don't want this ship here. I don't want this, this knight here. So I'm going to attack that knight. I'm going to attack that boat. So now I'm okay to go ahead and attack this city. Because that's what I really want to do. So, the game mechanic, any action. So, these aren't just isolated to battle, but could necessarily and I mean necessarily, be anything. As long as I'm engaging and I'm choosing what to do within the mechanic. So this results in a theme being created. So the theme of Civilization 5, surprise, surprise, is civilizing. Now we can take a narratological analysis and be critical of Civ5 as being, as idolizing Western civilization as the model of good development. You'll notice that the more advanced technologies are only westernized technologies, and we can see that the theme does indeed support a Western worldview. Okay, that seems to be all that I can get from Civ5 at the moment. Thank you very much for watching this show, and we'll be back next week with yet another episode of Ludiculous.